So my talk is See the World, Change the World, the Power of Experiential Education. So of course, if I'm going to talk about the world, I need you to travel with me. So I want you to come into a small village in Morocco. Just in case, I want to remind you that Morocco is in the far northwest corner of Africa, right below Spain. And the village we're going to go to is in the southwest of Morocco. It's called Arazan. I guarantee that almost no one here has ever heard of this village. In this village, 10 years ago, a dear friend of mine in Morocco, the last Jewish guide in the whole Arab world, Raphael David El-Maleh, went to find out if there was anything left of what had been a Jewish community of 400 or 500 people. Rafi traveled all over Morocco, still does, picking up remains, artifacts, things that are still in communities all over the country, from a Jewish community that once numbered 300,000 people, and today is probably down to 4,000, 4,500 people all told. He went to this small village. This little scene here on the screen is a typical doorway. A little store would open behind those, if they had one of the keys that we just were so beautifully told about. They'd open that door and you'd be able to see a small shop. And he came to the village, he went into the main cafe on the main street, and he asked the men sitting in the cafe, were there Jews in this village? The answer from the men in the village was yes, of course there were Jews in the village. Well, was there a synagogue in this village? Is there a synagogue in this village? At this point, the men answered, you know, the Jews left here in 1960. Most of us were not even born, or we were very little children. We don't really know. But there is one man in the village who knows. And if you walk through the streets and ask for Harim, Harim will tell you all about the Jews. Now I need to orient you to this village. This is not like a village in Westchester. This is a little village which until 10 years ago had no running water, had no electricity. Even today simply has unpaved streets. When it rains, it's pretty difficult to maneuver around. The whole village is adobe. The homes, the stores, everything you see. And if of course you don't take care of adobe, then it will slowly, if you will, melt away in the rains that come every year. So Rafi began to walk through the village, winding streets, not knowing for sure whether he would ever find his way back out. And he finally came to a man standing here. It's a little hard to see him. He's right here by me. I'll get a better picture of him in a moment for you. He came to this man, Harim, and he asked him the same question. Were there Jews in this village? Yes, of course, Harim said. And is there a synagogue? At this point, Harim reached into his pocket. You will be amazed at what he took out. And he brought out a long, old-fashioned wooden key. The key to that door. And he said to my friend Rafi, remember, this is a Berber, Muslim, uneducated man, wearing a long Moroccan robe, a long jalabiyah. He said to my friend Rafi, Baruch haba, welcome, in Hebrew. And then he recited the first line of the most central prayer of the Jewish liturgy, Shema Yisrael. Rafi was in shock. And Harim then continued and he said, you know, I've been waiting for you for 45 years. Rafi said, you've been waiting for me? I'm not even 45 years old at the time. Harim said, yes, when the rabbi left, I was 15 years old. And he said to me, Harim, here is the key to the synagogue. If a Jew ever comes to this village and asks for the synagogue, give him this key. It's an amazing story. We're a little closer. Inside that synagogue, redone really just by the handwork of my friend Rafi, a whitewashed wall, the word Mizrach, the eastern wall, and if you can see just a little bit, unfortunately the light is taking away, this is an 800-year-old wooden ark, painted in pastels, still there. Now you have to ask yourself the question, in this little poor village, why did Harim keep that key for 45 years? What was he going to do if it went on for 50 or 55 or 60 years and finally he was an old man and about to die? Was he going to hand the key to his son for the next generation to wait for this elusive Jew who might never appear? What does it mean that a Muslim Berber man, simple man, uneducated man, in a small village in the southwest of Morocco, cares for this synagogue building year after year, does not tear it down and make a bigger garden for his family to grow more crops, does not incorporate it into his own home, which was just across the way, and have more room for his family? Why does he guard this religious space of a people who no longer live in his community? What is that about? What's the story behind the story? So I said to you, my topic is see the world, change the world. What do I mean? When I encountered this story for the first time, I began to realize that my assumptions, my stereotypes, my conclusions about me as a Jew and a person like Harim as a Muslim had a brick wall in between us. There was no possibility of our really being able to engage each other, understand each other, and certainly in such a way preserve each other's history, dignity, integrity. So I began to wonder, maybe I really don't understand the whole story. And in fact, maybe a lot of other people along with me, Jews and Muslims all over the world, have only a small piece of understanding. When I left Morocco on that first trip, I noticed what I had not noticed when I came in. Royal Air Morocco gave me a daily newspaper, the French Daily Le Matin, the most popular daily in Morocco. You know what's at the top of the newspaper where the date is on every newspaper in the world? Of course, the date in our calendar, the Gregorian calendar. And logically, the date on the Islamic calendar. But would you believe that on a public newspaper in the country of Morocco, the date on the Hebrew calendar appears as well? How come? Then several years went by, and came back many times to this beautiful city. Look at this man. Again, I said, a person uneducated, but I'm talking about experiential education. And his experiential education was that he grew up next to a synagogue, learned all of its music, learned much of the Hebrew language. And every year now, when I go back to this village, which I do every year with students on the Kibbutz program, he recites a different piece of the liturgy from his memory. 2 years ago, he stood in that little synagogue and he recited the blessings that are said by a traditional Jew when they receive an aliyah to the Torah, when they come to read from the Torah on a Shabbat or a holiday. 3 years ago, he sang a melody for a song that we sing in Jewish homes on Friday night, Shalom Aleichem, a melody which I had never heard anywhere else in the world, embedded in his memory. It's quite extraordinary. And of course, here with some of my former students, there's a look in this simple man's eye that tells you what it was that allowed him to be this preserver of relationship between the two. The story, however, only begins with Harim. And I'm just going to go back and keep you on the picture of the synagogue. So this is your image of a piece of Morocco, but now the story continues. My friend Rafi, of course, is always introducing me to these kinds of people. About 5 years ago, he called me And he said, listen, I'm on the campus of Al Akhwain University in Ifran, south of the city of Fez in the Atlas Mountains. I'm giving a lecture to the university about Moroccan Jewish history. I said, who are you speaking to? He said, I'm speaking to a student group called Moadon Mimuna. The Hebrew word Moadon, a club, the Mimuna Club. I said, I'm surprised that there are enough Jewish students on this campus to constitute what I guess he was describing as a Jewish culture club. He says back here, I didn't say they were Jewish students. These are Muslim students. They're interested in the study of Hebrew language and Jewish culture. I said, Rafi, why? He said, because the king himself says that the Jews are more Moroccan than the Moroccans. Because they've been in Morocco for almost 1,000 years before any Arabs came or Islam came. Now imagine that, again, breaking my stereotype, my assumption, my image of what the nature of our relationship is. The young man who founded this club comes to me and he says, remember again, before I tell you what he asked me, that we have spent maybe 2 private minutes together and a total of 5 minutes together in the whole course of this extended hour and a half. So we don't know each other, and he certainly doesn't know me. He comes to me and he says, you know, the students in the Mimuna Club feel that there are some things that we don't know, and we need to know more. We would like to hold the first conference on the Holocaust in the Arab world here on our campus. Will you help us? So I said to myself, this is extraordinary. The commonplace that we know of throughout the Arab world is what is called Holocaust denial. And therefore, I'm now standing with a group of young Moroccan Muslim students who want to hold a Holocaust conference, the first in the Arab world on their campus in Morocco. Rather extraordinary. And in September of 2011, a 2-day conference took place. I took responsibility to bring a Holocaust historian, a survivor, a group of students who were my alumni who had taken some Holocaust courses on campus, and they arranged for invitations from faculty to the broader community in Casablanca and Rabat, and even for kosher food for the Jewish guests who were coming from different parts of the world. The conference took place. It was quite extraordinary. When it was over, the students came to me and they said, you know, this was a very powerful thing. We knew a little bit from the internet, but we'd never heard a survivor speak. We really didn't have the history. We think that we should go to Auschwitz. Can you arrange for us to do so? I said, look, if that's what you want, I'll try and arrange it. But in my opinion, if you really want to take a step, you need to come to Israel. Israel! Peter, please, don't even discuss such an idea. This is not something, this is beyond what we're talking about. We cannot possibly consider anything like that. Maybe someday if there is peace in the Middle East. Otherwise, forget about it. I said, okay, I'll work on what you want. 5 weeks later, the phone rings. El Mehdi Boudra, the young man who founded the Moadon Mimuna, says to me, I have 25 resumes on my desk. How many students can we take on the trip? I said, what trip? He said, well, to Israel, of course. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, after you left, we sat for 3 weeks. We went around the table so that everyone could say their piece. And everyone, one after the other, said, Peter can bring American Jewish students to Morocco and treat our religion and our country and our language and our history with so much respect, then the least that we can do is the same to him. And in September, June, of 2012, a group of 16 Moroccan Muslim students came as the first group of Arab students on an Israel seminar in the history of the State of Israel. And when I said before that the title of my talk was See the World, Change the World, I said that because in the end, none of this would have happened had I not first ventured into that world and be willing and continue to be willing to take steps into the unexpected and the unknown, which are the components of experiential education. We're speaking today in a school. There is no obvious belittlement to the academic pursuit of knowledge from books, from lectures. But when you add to the intellectual, the physical experience of being in the field, things happen that one cannot experience from books and that one can never anticipate. And this tale of encounter, just in the one example I'm giving you from Morocco, is taking place in the work that I'm doing all over the world. And therefore, I see its power. And I wonder whether there are ways for us to deepen our sense of connection to the world, and therefore begin to change that world through the process of engaging the other. I just heard a lecture the other day by former President Clinton, in which he said that in all of the work that he did over those years in international diplomacy, the most important ingredient in international diplomacy was mutual trust. There can be no mutual trust if ultimately there is no mutual encounter. And sometimes, as in the examples that I have given you just from a few moments in Morocco, sometimes those moments of mutual encounter contain the unanticipated, and of course, as a result, contain the ingredients of change for the future which we cannot even begin to imagine. And with that, as my clock ticks off my final moments, I will just say that this has been a wonderful treat to share with you what I hope you will feel is an encouragement into this world of the experiential. Thank you very much.